Welcome to Ahead of the Game, a podcast brought to you by the Digital Marketing Institute. I'm your host, Will Francis, and today I'll be talking to Kenita Kelsall. She's the founder of School of Social, a strategy and training consultancy where she puts her passion and energy into giving businesses simple solutions to everyday social media challenges. She is a LinkedIn Learning instructor and a certified trainer for them and Meta. She's worked with brands globally across all kinds of sectors that you can think of. And today we're going to talk specifically all about building community, true community in social media. Kenita, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you.
Hi, Will. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited because this is a pet topic of mine, for sure, social. And I would say that community is one of the most overused. It's up there with authentic, isn't it? It's one of the most overused words in the industry because normally when people talk about a community, they're actually just talking about a bunch of followers, not an actual community. So, but what do you think it means just to get us started? True community in social.
It's a group of people that come together, right? Around a shared interest, a passion. And those people trust each other. That is what community is.
Yeah.
And something I really want to talk about today is how can brands enable that rather than be the main character?
But brands always want to be the main character, and the people around, the non-marketers around us, also, they expect us to cast ourselves as the main character, don't they? So there's a natural sort of tension there. How do you sort of persuade people about that?
I don't think it's the brand's job to persuade people to become part of their community. It's their actual community, their customers, their audience that should do the legwork for them. They just need to provide a space for that to happen. And that space isn't just having a social media platform, being on TikTok, being on YouTube. It's about showing up around like key cultural moments or things that matter to audiences so the audiences connect.
Why do you think there's been so much more talk recently again of communities of one sort or another?
Post-pandemic, it's becoming more and more important for brands to like bring people back together. Or that's what they think they should be doing.
Yeah.
Whether they're doing it right or not. And I would say that social in particular, it's become significantly like oversaturated with content, and brands trying really, really hard to create a connection beyond just advertising.
Yeah, I mean, because we've seen like the run clubs thing and, you know, like in-person communities, in-person meetups being a big trend. But also, at the same time, I'm seeing, and this is not a new thing, it's been happening over the last few years, this move towards more private communities, Discord servers, private social groups, Facebook groups, whatever, where I think maybe people feel just less marketed to.
Do you know who I think is really, really good at doing this? So Fred again is an international artist, DJ. He, I think, is an example of someone who has built a community globally and use platforms. And I think the word used is really important here. Use platforms like Discord and formats like Instagram stories to connect private groups to connect with his fans. And it just feels really natural. And I've seen lots of different artists, as in like musicians, do a really good job at that. And these are global artists as well. So they've got communities everywhere, but they create these intimate spaces for them locally and online too, that makes you feel like you're part of something special.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think good companies have been doing that for a long time. Like, I think that, I know it's an overused example, but you know, as an Apple owner back in the 90s or noughties, you felt part of something, and it was made to feel like even the unboxing experience was like, this is different, this is next level. The Apple stores, I'm an Apple person now. And but the same you see with brands like Glossier or whatever, you know, you're made to feel like part of a tribe, and that's quite alluring for people. And not only does it attract people, but it probably keeps them a lot more loyal as well over time, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the one thing that like the bigger brands probably need to be careful of, especially if they're global, is like polarizing people as well. And then kind of going back to your comment on run clubs, on running, they're really great at doing this, Gymshark. But is there a question around, are they creating such big communities that they actually start to become inaccessible for the like-minded person? But the brands that do it well is they get very local. And the brand is, again, enabling and facilitating, but they're letting those local communities kind of take ownership.
Yeah.
Refy Beauty is another example of a brand doing that really well, I think, as well.
Who is, sorry?
Refy Beauty.
Yeah, it's true that, isn't it? It's like I suppose if it's like good chains, you know, that let's say Starbucks round the corner. It's not just one in a million. It's my local Starbucks, and I know the person in there that knows my coffee order. It's some version of that we can't engage with vast global brands. We're just not wired to do that, but we can engage with our local one. And I think that's a really good point, Nat, about having a mega community of millions of people. It doesn't really feel much like sitting around the campfire, does it? You know, it's not very personable. It's not very relatable. So that's interesting. I think that's definitely something to take away.
You know, Waitrose, they are a supermarket chain here in the UK, and they've put a lot of emphasis on their local channels.
Yeah.
So if you were to go on Instagram and check out Saffron Walden Waitrose, they've got, I think, over like 13,000 followers. And the people who are promoting Waitrose products are their everyday staff, employees. Yeah. And it's brilliant. And if you lived in that local area in the UK, you're going to build some sort of connection with these people and probably want to go in and see them and converse with them. And
yeah, because you'll recognise them from that TikTok video.
It feels very accessible, local. You feel like you're part of something.
True.
And that's a really good example of a brand thinking more locally, although they are like national. And I've seen a lot of brands tap into that recently, activating, like especially bricks and mortar, activating their local stores on social to build connection with people in that specific area.
I do have a theory that I'm getting surer about, where I think on some level brands in social kind of quite quickly dying. And I don't know what you think about this. I mean, I can see there's lots of credible counter arguments to this, but more and more, there just doesn't seem to be room for an account represented by the name of a company and a logo and a load of posts that feel like something close to official announcements from a massive brand. I think that we see more brands moving to just using creators alone as their mouthpiece on the creators' accounts or on made-up accounts where it's like so-and-so creator at this brand or its staff accounts, or communities, you know, which are more sort of neutral spaces, like let's say take a Facebook group where it doesn't feel like completely owned and run by the brand. There's also community members who maybe moderate it and help with that. And I just think this sort of quite linear way that we thought about social when we all got used to it, you know, 12, 15 years ago, that's definitely on its way out big time. But I don't know what you make of that. Do you think I'm wrong?
Yeah, no, I certainly think, and I've experienced with some of the brands that I've been working with, the emphasis on using, again, like creators' own channels to connect with their target audience, rather than everything having to be hosted, distributed, advertised on the main brand channel. Yeah. It doesn't mean that there's no affiliation between that creator and brand. There's still that connection.
Yeah.
And that's why, without going off a tangent, brands should be working consistently with personalities and faces that represent the brand, that have their own communities.
Yeah.
Rather than it being like a transaction. So, for example, take brand A, I would like Refi have an extension of my team. And I really don't like that word. It's the same as authentic, right? It's just bingo. But I would recruit a bunch of people that represent my brand on a macro and micro level and work with them exclusively to almost be the ambassadors and the voice piece of what the brand is doing and their values, but using their own channels to do this.
Yeah.
Because people follow those people for a specific reason. They inspire them, or there's some sort of shared interest. And that's what I'm seeing, or the way the world moving.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I think what's interesting is that, you see, if you said that to a more traditional marketer or a non-marketer, right, you see, what they get hung up on is the real estate of having that brand profile. I'd be like, why would we give that real estate up? And okay, I sort of, maybe from a search point of view, yeah, okay, maybe. But when you think about it, that real estate, you know, because we would say, well, having these creators be our mouthpiece, that's just really risky. And my answer is, well, do you know what? That real estate of your brand account, you can get to 1 million followers and still no one's listening to you, because if your content starts to suck and the algorithm just stops showing it to people, you know, we've seen lots of that where people build up huge followings and don't reach anyone, because nowadays it's not about who you follow, is it, in social? Each piece of content lives or dies on its own merits. And the second thing is, as we've seen recently, platforms come and go, right? You know, TikTok could get banned or change into something else, or, you know, completely change their product. And that's a risk. Whereas if you've actually got these ambassadors, your sort of tribe your audience will just follow them wherever they go. Yeah. And if that's a new platform tomorrow, then that's kind of fine. It makes your audience a bit more portable, potentially.
I've certainly seen in the B2B space, when we talk about building up your employees' profile and then being ambassadors of your brand, a lot of businesses that I've trained and worked with, they're scared to do that because they say to me, well, they're going to leave the business. And what happens if we build up their profile and then they're gone?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think you've got to look slightly differently. And actually, in that time that they are an ambassador of the business that they are working for, you are going to reap benefits. And you're probably going to have a better relationship with that person because you've given them the creative freedom, you've given them the opportunity to share their perspectives and opinions with the world.
Well, employers are supposed to develop their staff, and that is just another way you do it, right? I mean, it's like saying, oh, we're not paying for people to go on training courses. They'll use those skills in their next job. Yeah. You wouldn't say that, would you?
Exactly,
so it's exactly the same thing.
Exactly. Everything is evolving, and those micro, let's call them influence, are becoming the most important part of a brand strategy and a way for brands to build communities. They have to happen quite naturally when it comes to building community. It can't be forced.
Yeah. Let's just nail it down a bit. So firstly, I want to get from you, like, what have you seen in your years that's changed, that's led us here? Why was this not such a focus 10 years ago? What's changed?
I guess social was shiny and new, and it was a way to connect with people all over the world through advertising or through your organic feed. It was exciting, and it was a way for brands to get messages to humans in a way that was never possible before. But the feeds are so saturated now.
Right, yeah.
That humans are becoming tired of being bombarded with messages that just don't feel very genuine and real.
Yeah.
And therefore there needs to be a shift in the way that brands connect with humans, and a shift that feels natural and not forced.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we're all done with the bombarding for sure. Okay, so people listening to this are like, okay, this is great, get it, on board. Let's try and lay out the steps to building a genuinely engaged community. What would you think be the steps? Where would I even start?
Where you start is really like getting to know your audience, and not just their characteristics and their demographics, but their wants and needs. their challenges, and you as a brand showing up and working out how you can support them in some shape or form around that. Okay.
If I was starting from scratch, is it that I would go and set up some community space like a Discord server or Facebook group? How do I sort of launch a community without that initial problem of there not being many people there?
If, like, for example, if we are going to start a new brand which is for new mums, you first need to understand, where do new mums hang out online?
Yes.
What are new mums going through? They're scared, they're excited. So you really get to know them. And then we set up a space online and we bring those people together and we make sure that they feel part of the brand, and they help us build that brand. We lean into them for advice on what they need. It needs to be a two-way dialogue rather than just a broadcast of this is what we think you should be considering or thinking about or worrying about, or this is how we can help you. We need to know from them, because the only way to really build a connection is to get to know someone, whether that community is big or small.
Okay, so then let's say we're getting that going. How can we get those people talking with each other, interacting with each other, and therefore how involved or not do we as brands get?
I do think it happens quite naturally. I do think there needs to be like community guidelines, like this is a safe space. And I know that Facebook groups were very, very good at that. For channels like WhatsApp, it is a little bit more tricky, and they typically are broadcast from a brand perspective. But if you are going to create a space, I think, again, reminding those people that you are there to enable this conversation, you provide the platform, and then people just converse.
Yeah, like-minded people do very easily, don't they? Because I think, one of my favorite examples I use a lot in my workshops is Peloton have this thing called the official Peloton member page on Facebook. I like to show Facebook because it's a bit old school. It's not a page, it's a group, and there's 500,000 members. And it's so seriously active. And I have, in all my days of showing that to people, I've never once seen Peloton there. It is just the group members asking each other questions, sharing pain points, what they love, hate about the product, supporting each other's successes and stuff like that. I think clearly, to start with, I would imagine the brand has to, not those cringy conversation starters, it's probably through content that they're maybe dropping in there that's just useful, really super valuable content maybe. I mean, what is the sort of the fire starter, if you like, the firelighter kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'd say educational content makes sense. I know that when I used to work on the Specsavers account, we had a group on Facebook, and we had like specialist people in there that would be responding to people's queries and providing that expertise. And then naturally people would discuss with each other their problems. Slightly different, but broadcast channels on Instagram are a really good space for brands to push out their content and make people feel like it's an exclusive space. And so I do think there is that need, if you are starting out, to set the tone.
I wonder if you can only really launch a closed community once you've actually built an open one. I mean, that's how I normally see it played out, where you've got some sort of audience. There's already community kind of happening in the comments on your content, and then at some point you say, look guys, great news, we're launching a closed community. It's for the VIPs, it's going to be exclusive, this and that. Do you think that's the foundation you need?
I certainly think if you are a global brand, you probably need to have some sort of presence externally first, because there needs to be trust.
Yeah.
But actually, I think it can work locally. You probably could do it the other way around. I've certainly been part of like local WhatsApp groups.
Same,
and my point of kind of contact with that brand has been through that private communication, you could say, or closed communication, before I've even followed their Instagram page.
I guess the thing about building an audience publicly is on some level you get to learn who it is that resonates with you and You get someone just to announce the whole thing to, I suppose, don't you? Because otherwise, who are you even announcing it to? But yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm the same. I'm a member of lots of closed communities. I think what I've thought was interesting is, like Discord.
Yeah.
Discord's a great example of how something that, I mean, you still have to be something of a geek to be able to use Discord. The user experience isn't amazing, but it's a good experience of how something starts in a very kind of niche, geeky community, i.e. gaming, and then broadens out slightly to tech. But it not only does the app become mainstream, but the ways of doing things become mainstream. Like, there's still something about Discord that, even if it's not a gaming-y, techie community, they still use the Discord functionality of having channels and the developers behind the product being there, even though it might not be a tech product. And it feels like you're almost in the internal Slack channel of a Silicon Valley company, but you're not. It's a beauty brand or a sportswear brand or something. That's fascinating to me, that people have sort of happily adopted those kind of ways of engaging with community. But they clearly respond to this feeling of like you're hanging out with the actual people behind the product, and not in a convoluted way like Curry's doing their, TikToks in store. I'm not talking about that. It feels much more like you're sort of almost eavesdropping on their internal comms.
Have you heard of Cleats Club? Yes.
Maybe, yeah.
So it is James Kirkham, friend of mine in the marketing world. He's recently launched an app that connects you with footballers, right? So let's say I'm part of Harry Kane's chat. I can post questions to Harry Kane. He may or may not respond, okay? But the questions that I ask, the dialogue in that chat, the content that he's uploading to that chat is all behind the scenes. It's all exclusive. It doesn't exist anywhere else. And I think that is an example of how people like to connect with talent or bigger brands. It needs to feel like it's special, special to you. So I can even see like talent moving into this space where it's a lot more personal and feels a little bit more special and more intimate.
Yeah, I see that. I'm just looking at it. It looks great, actually. So yeah, it's actually sports stars are essentially made to feel more accessible, and you can connect directly with them. No algorithms, just authenticity, as it says, which is interesting. It's funny, we've been doing that around talent for a long time. I mean, I used to work at MySpace in the noughties.
Oh, old school.
I know. And a big part of our job was that it was really leaning on how you could. That's how I got into it personally. I was in a band and I was like talking to like proper industry people, and on MySpace I was like, this is amazing. That's why I ended up getting myself a job there. I think we've always craved that, haven't we, to sort of like disintermediate, as a lot of people talk about these days, and really take out the middle, whatever it is, and just connect people to the stuff they love. And there'll always be a value in doing that, clearly, and that hasn't gone away. It was the case 20 years ago, and it's the case now.
Yeah, and I think that where brands come in and what they maybe get worried about, and you mentioned it earlier, is like that this lack of control, right? Like real estate. And actually it's really hard to measure the success of community engagement. It might not be measurable. There might not be a metric associated to it. And actually, should we be focusing on metrics? Or should we be focusing on the dialogue and the sentiment of that conversation and the meetups that might happen afterwards between these people that we've connected? And I think that's maybe where brands do get worried, giving it over to the community or a creator of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, like him or not, I thought Gary Vee had a good quote about that years ago. I remember him saying something like, asking what the ROI on social media is asking like what the ROI on your mum is.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that is true. That's basically true. I mean, and the idea that you can quantify the impact this stuff has, I've never been a believer in that. I think marketing attribution is just at best a myth, and maybe even a complete lie. And, ultimately you're impacting people in immeasurable ways. That's just marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So for example, if you were let's say you are Gymshark or you're on running and you set up like local running events across the UK, those in real life experiences, by the way, that people really, really want, like what are you going to do? Measure how many people go to them? Like, oh, is it better if 1,000 people go? Well, actually, maybe not. Maybe there was 10 people that went that were so connected to the brand and each other that was a lot more successful and felt a lot more intimate than if there was like 10,000 people that turned up. So it's basically a marathon, which is just so, yeah.
Well, that is true, isn't it? I mean, that's what we always say about things like emails and podcasts and these very high value, high touch, heavy, and high engagement channels. The numbers are going to look rubbish. All right. If you start a podcast, big major warning, your numbers are going to look rubbish.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's your next door neighbor's kid is getting bigger numbers on TikTok with their nonsense videos than you ever get with your professional podcast. But it's about quality. UK, anyone can get 1 million views on TikTok, but getting 1,000 listeners to a podcast or getting 100 people to turn up to an in-person community event is massive. Like, that's a massive achievement. Do you know what I mean? So it is important to acknowledge that for sure. I'm curious. I mean, you see a lot of this stuff. You're out in the wild every day. Where have you seen brands kind of mess this stuff up? Where have you seen companies go wrong trying to build communities?
I think brands that think community is, followers, or they're confusing brand activations with community. That's where it all goes wrong for me, because brand and community are very, very separate things.
Right. What do you mean mixing brand activation with community? Give us an example of what you mean there.
So, for example, a brand might sponsor an event, right? And they might pump loads of cash into it. Let's say it's a festival, and they give out free coupons at this festival. They get people all excited, and they give loads of tickets away, and they do that once, right? Or they might do it multiple times throughout the year. But that's not building a community. That's just promoting your brand and giving away free stuff. And maybe those people that come to that festival are like-minded and they might connect in some shape or form. But that's not nurturing and providing a space for people to long-term, connect with each other.
Well, there's two things there, isn't it? Firstly, marketing's fine. Promoting's fine, isn't it? You're right. I mean, there's a job to be done there, but it's not building a community. I think a lot of marketers are very scared of suggesting, like, do you know what? I think we should do something that will really massively please like 300 people. Most people's bosses would be like, but last week we did a campaign to 20,000 people, so maybe we should do that. And it's really hard, isn't it, to sort of talk about the difference in quality, I think.
Yeah, and I think if I look at brands that do it well, and I'm talking like global brands like Lululemon, okay, they have yoga studios in their stores.
Yeah.
And they obviously sell like yoga apparel. They give discounts to people who have done yoga teacher training. But what they're doing is saying, hands off, like if you want to come and, practice in a space that is safe, you come and do that. And that's them facilitating it. And it's always on, it's consistent. It's that consistent narrative. It's not just, hey, we've got loads of cash, we can pump loads of money in this, we can bring all the best talent in the world and make this great experience. I think it's going to get you the good PR, and it's going to create fame, and it will get you that attention. But I don't believe that is community building.
Yeah, I think there's the commitment, the across the board commitment. If you're going to do it, talk about it in your newsletter, on your thank you page when people have bought from you, in all those places where people are probably that they're most ready to jump into something like that. You're absolutely right. I think there's the commitment. You can't just be like a campaign.
and I tell you where I see this quite a lot is when brands during Pride Month start to get really noisy on LinkedIn, and they talk about their LGBTQI plus staff. yet they only talk about it during Pride One or International Women's Day. They talk about women on International Women's Day, but those conversations are not starting in the boardroom. They're happening on social media. And I think that's what I mean. The narratives aren't consistent. It's for the wrong reason. They're trying to bring these people together.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's a whole other thing, isn't it? The sort of brands, sort of woke washing or whatever you call it, greenwashing and stuff like that is just that's just poor marketing, I think. Okay, what are your favourite examples of real companies, large or small, doing community marketing really well? If we had to sort of shout a few out,
I definitely think Refi.
Yeah,
because they are focusing on their real people, like their ambassadors, and they are rewarding their ambassadors. They're taking them on nice trips. They're making them feel, and again, I really don't like this word, but like an extension of the Refi team.
Yeah.
I actually think that like some of the local like shops and businesses in my town are really good at community, because again, they provide this space, so like a WhatsApp group for kind of like dialogue with what we need as a customer. I think local can actually get it right quicker. I think it becomes
they do.
a lot,
They definitely,
I think it becomes a lot harder, doesn't it, when you're trying to scale and connect with lots of different types of people all over the world.
Yeah, I think bigger companies can learn a lot from that. Like literally act like your local cricket club kind of thing, you know.
I've mentioned Lululemon. I do think that On has really tapped into community, especially
this
with
is
all their
on
run
the
clubs.
trainer brand.
Yeah, on the
people
trainer
may have
brand.
seen
Sorry,
with the ON logo. Took me a while to get that, but
yeah, on Cloud. So I really like what they've done, because again, they've thought local. They've thought about people across the UK in different like cities, and they're providing these spaces where people can meet each other from all different walks of life and get out on the streets and run.
What would you say are your top 5 tips for a company of any size? There's a lot of our listeners, small to medium-sized businesses as well as bigger brands, trying to get started building a community around their product or service.
Okay, so my top 5 tips. Number 1, really get to know your audience, their wants and needs, and their pain points. Number 2, look at where they're hanging out and talking to each other. So number 3, show up in that space. Number 4, consistently provide content. Let's just bucket it as content to show them that you are listening to their pain points, their wants and needs. And then following that, provide a platform or some sort of space so they can discuss between them and you can connect those people together.
Nice. Do you think that, I mean, again, it sounds a bit heavy investment to other people perhaps, but should we be creating content and things that are just for that community, do you think?
I think it's a really good idea, because you're saying, I hear you, I'm listening. And also because we are experts in this space, let's say running, because we've talked about running a lot, we can give you tips, we can give you tricks. We can tell you how potentially running in the woods might impact your calves versus running on the road. Yeah. You know, we can give you that expert knowledge because that's why we exist.
And then again, thinking about that, how do you think the kind of live opportunities that have really come to the fore in the last couple of years more, although been around for a while, you know, what was there an opportunity there? You know, like whether it's live LinkedIn events or TikTok live, even Facebook live, you know, things like that. You talk about showing up, but how more immediate a way is there to show up than actually doing so live on camera and saying, hi, it's me, I run the company and I'm doing you know how they do a kind of, not a town hall, but office hours. They'll do an office hours and it'll be like, you know, Wednesday, 5 p.m. and it's every single week and it's the brand really showing up in a way that, you know, you'd only do that if you really cared about the audience.
Adam Mosseri, Adam, who heads up Instagram, right? I think he's really good at this because, yes, he shows up on my feed and he is always providing kind of consistent updates with the algorithm to people that work in social. And he's honest and he provides educational like insight that's going to help me in my job. So I do think that there is a need, but it really does depend on like who is the voice of that. Like, is it the company CEO? Is it a product expert? And I think it depends what it is that you're talking about in terms of what you give to your community and show up and share.
I mean, I think it could be anyway. I suppose it's just a way of saying we care enough to do this. I think that's what communities need to see. They need to see that it's not just, you're not chasing a trend and setting up a community where actually there's not much happening, there's no real good reason to join. You're actually putting the work in. I think on some level, you probably need to demonstrate that, I think.
Yeah, and I certainly think from a like employee advocacy perspective, when you have brands that are not just the CEO that is showing up on LinkedIn, you have your HR person, your intern. That's where I think brands are more successful than those that are not, when they have like lots of different faces and personalities representing the brand and sharing their opinions and perspectives.
That is true, but from a diversity point of view. But what I mean by there is, showing that we are made up of normal people of all kinds, and probably people like you, the audience, because people always like to see themselves cast. Good. We think we've covered it all. I got the top 5 tips.
I think when it comes to community, it's not that we want to connect; it's that we need to connect, and I think that's key. We want to be understood. And if you've got a brand that is showing you that they understand you and then bringing people into that circle who also are like you, that is where you're going to get gold. It's not the wanting, it's you absolutely need it. And there's so many studies. There's a Harvard study which talks about like one of the reasons people lead and live healthy, happy lives, yes, diet, yes, things like climate and where you live, but most importantly, your community.
True.
So this is in us.
It is.
And I think, brands should not be forcing it on audiences, right? They shouldn't just be forcing people together and forcing ideas. It's so much more natural. And those that actually listen to what people want and need or feel frustrated about or what makes them happy, and then bringing other people into the mix that are like them, that is where success happens. And that's why Lululemon is a great example, because they know that yogi shop at their brand. What we're going to do is we're going to create yoga studios in each of our stores so we can bring these people together.
That's interesting. Right. Thanks so much, Kenita. I've learned a lot. Before I let you go, just remind people where they can find more out about you and connect with you online.
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's Kenita Kelsall, Kenita like Ryvita. And then you can check out schoolofsocial.org.uk as well.
Very cool. What do you do at School of Social? I didn't ask you that.
So it's part social strategy, part training. So I work with brands globally and support them on their paid, owned and earned strategies. And then from a training perspective, I train people across everything that's social related. I basically bleed social media. And that could be from influencer marketing to social commerce, AI on social. I teach it all. Anything social related, it's my jam sandwich.
Cool. Very cool. Right. Well, we will seek you out. Thanks very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Will.